you can see over there in H, percent of total profit margin, I put 67% of our profit margin that I spread to labor and equipment items, and 33% to material and subcontract. So I had twice as much money weighted to labor and equipment as I did for materials and subs. Why? Because labor and equipment and materials and subs are more risky operations that are going to go up or down, right? And so what that ended up giving me was 48 cents per dollar of bare cost is what the markup needed to be on it, or maybe that's a percentage. I don't fucking remember. So that number is tied over into the bid closing sheet, and for each dollar that was in one of those columns for labor and equipment, it gets hit with that factor, and that's how you come up. Go back to the bid closing sheet. Go to the indirect cost and click on one of those cells. So you can see
you're applying that percentage to the indirect price, basically.
Mm-hmm. And then click over the profit one in there.
Right there.
Yeah. So you can see I was multiplying it by the factor that's up above. Yeah. And then you can see that factor that's up above there, and that factor 26.6 comes from one of the other sheets, I'm assuming, that it's tied to.
That was the profit markup. Those were that category you're looking at. It was a percent of your total profit. That's what those percentages were.
There you go. So anyways, the point is, it's fucking complicated.
Yeah.
That's like way more complicated than what we usually have to do.
Right. So you want to come up with your own scheme beforehand, and vet it and understand it and be able to explain it when you get asked a question, and make sure that the math works out right. And there's easy checks that you can do on it on your final number, right, to make sure that your factors are multiplying out the right way and all that other jazz.
Yeah, we have it set up to where our first total is our direct costs plus our indirects plus our profit, and it double checks with our final spreaded total. So it's within.
It lays out very similar to this.
Yeah.
Can you click on one of the indirect things again? It's got numbers in it. Okay, so it relates, your indirects relate to your direct costs, yes?
Yes.
Okay, and in your particular experience, this problem, they gave you labor through subcontract, all four of those deals. Here it is in a shit ton of different papers, make it work, and then you created your total direct costs,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, those percentages that you tack on to indirect, which then determine the rest of the percentages, those arbitrary, or those called out somewhere. You determine what's best for those?
The indirect on it. Sorry, one more time.
So I'm catching how you're. I get that. You took all these and it gave you this total cost, and then from this total cost, you determine these because these are a percentage of this total cost for each
No.
category.
So basically, you're taking your total direct costs, and they give you indirects, right?
Right.
So you're basically figuring out a percentage to apply those indirects to each item.
So I got it. Hopefully, it's going to help it out on this one. Do you have that the AGC sheet open again?
Yeah, I see where they
Sorry.
go.
Did you have those two words that were downloaded? Go to that one right there.
So they give you just
Scroll down. No, is that not the introduction, the actual problem statement? Oh, you didn't download that one yet? Shit. Because it's funny, this is the 2008 one. This is the actual one that I'm showing you guys the stuff for. So it'll tell you. I think they gave us a percentage. They said mark it up.
That's ultimately what I was trying to get to. I'm gripping, even though I'm having trouble figuring out how to say it, but I can get there. I'm gripping how the numbers connect to
Total indirect costs are $380,966. So I should have those ones written on the spreadsheet in there. So if you go to the indirects, so there's 380. That's what our total needs to add up to.
So
So
your
we,
direct plus your indirect. So your direct, whatever that was, plus that 380.
Equals your total.
your total
Budget.
cost, and then you put
And then
profit
you
margin on
put your
top of it
35%
of
on top of
35% on top of that. Right. So my total direct cost is $913,000. Right.
Right.
And so that means for each, since we have $380,000 of indirect, there's 41 cents of indirect cost for every dollar of direct cost.
Okay.
And that,
Okay.
I believe, I spread evenly. Scroll, go to the bid closing sheet, 41.68. Yeah, so I spread that evenly for indirects. Indirects are spread evenly across each direct cost dollar.
Can you put the direct costs in the analysis?
It's just adding up the four of them.
Okay, so without all this data, unit added, that was given, or did you have?
Yes.
Yeah, it's okay.
Most of it was given. The items that you do yourself are
It's
not.
not given.
You have to put those numbers in. So anyways, I spread indirects evenly, but I spread profit margin differently. You can see that 48% is the average markup for labor and equipment, and 22.6% is the average markup for materials and subs. But when you take those markups, add them together, it equals 35% total of the overall direct or indirect and direct costs together.
Because you should have those things.
Yeah.
We go with labor and equipment first, just down to the 796.
No.
P7.
So we plus
Labor
and
equipment.
then multiply by that percent.
And then the third column that's over there in profit markup is like a check of each one, right?
Those two columns should add up to the, so the 20, yeah. these are
Yeah.
good.
If you go up to the 35% up there, is that hard keyed in or is that a check? No, it's just in there. But you should be able to take that whole column, add it up, divide it by your total cost, and it'll be 35%. Supposedly.
So if
I don't know if
you
that
sell
wide enough.
Um,
second,
it was it had a, what the hell do you call it? An amendment.
incentive or whatever, or is it like,
Scroll down to it. It has the name of it. It's an additive alternate.
yeah, I don't know.
So they could choose to do that or not, and that actually made it kind of so that makes this more complicated too, because they base the selection of your bid off of your total price with the additive alternate, depending on, that's what it said in our bid documents. That makes sense. So they're going to take the top total plus the bottom total, add those together, and whoever on bid day has the lowest one is going to get the job. They're going to decide from there if they want to actually award the additive alternate, if they have enough money left in their budget or whatever. So that's another way that you can get
So you don't
tricky
wanna
with
put
it.
in your indirects in that.
Exactly, because
then
you're
if they don't pick it, then you lose all that indirect. So you're fucked.
right. So I had to suck all the money out of those and put
But you
them
still put your
them in.
35% on it, right?
Right. Well, I don't know
Pull
if
a little out?
you can pull profit margin out of them too if you want to. I mean, that's kind of up to you.
So risky to-
I mean, because if you make those bid items super cheap, and then they end up saying, "Oh, well, we want to do double that quantity of that bid item," then you can be in a bad spot, you know. So anyhow, we've gotten into the weeds on this sheet, but I mean, I think we finally. This was what 7 years ago for me, so we recreated it and fucking figured out what the hell I did when I was sitting in there. I guess one of the points is be good at Excel, because that's what's going to run this, is being good at Excel, having things formatted well so that they're legible and readable on here. Yeah, and then writing notes in there on it and trying to explain what all these things are doing. Like I kind of tried to do it with notes at the bottom of the other two tabs on explaining to them how I spread everything out. I think if you maybe not, I don't know, on the stuff that I printed out, I might have. But anyhow, that's
Can we go over real quick again that how 48226 turns into 35%?
yeah. So if you take all of the numbers that are underneath the 35% and added those up and divided those by the whatever the hell is the indirect cost and the direct cost together, it's going to equal 35%. That's because they say mark your job up 35%. Go to the profit spread. Go to the profit spread. That one will explain it to you. So our bear cost on the job is direct cost plus indirect cost. Right? So
I'll probably have it on a link to YouTube or something.
Hair cost is direct plus indirect.
So over there, that equals $319,000, right? 35% of the bear cost is $319,000. So then I took that $319,000 and I said, all right, I want to put 2/3 of that to my profit margin, and I want to put 2/3 of that to my labor and equipment, and 1/3 of that to my materials and subs. So I broke it out, and that's how I ended up. You take that 214,000 divided by the 446,000 over there, and that's 48%. Or no, sorry, that's 48 cents per dollar. Yeah, there you go. So that's where those ones came up from.
How did you pick those that percentage? I mean, just the thirds. Why?
So normally what we do on a lot of jobs, like the standard practice that I learned from Granite was that we would do 30%. When we spread it, what would we do? We would do 20% on labor and equipment, 10% or 15% on, 20% on labor, like 15% on equipment, then like 5% on subs, and 10% on materials. And that's kind of how we do it in our bid closing program too. Is you decide at the end of the job, it's like, let's what percentages do we want to do in here? So based off of that, looking at the total cost average of most stuff, it ends up being 2/3 of your cost, or 2/3 of your profit is going to end up rolling into the labor and equipment. So I didn't really pull them out of my ass, but I had to come up with them in a different way than using the standard 20, 15, 10, 5. But you could do that as well if you wanted to. It was a little bit more convoluted.
What was it, 10%?
Yeah, material.
5 was the subs.
Yeah.
Does
So,
it make a difference if it's maybe a project's more labor intensive or there's more material?
definitely.
Yeah, like a data job.
Yeah.
There's a shit ton of labor, you're gonna have more risk, so you gotta put more money in it.
And you have a shit ton of cost in material on it too.
Yeah.
So if you put too much percentage in material, it's gonna your overall, because what you always want to end up looking at the end of the day is what's your total profit margin on the job, which 35%. That's funny. Like we used to fucking bid jobs at 35%. It was before fucking 2000. Well, even in 2007 and 2008, things were still okay at some points. But yeah, now like profit margins are like fucking 10%,
Well, after
maybe.
corporate, then it's like 2.
Oh yeah, once they pull out your shit. So.
Oh yeah, but it's on this job.
But the point is, you're going off of what they give you. Either they're going to tell you what percentage to put on it, or they're going to tell you what dollar value to put on it. And what they did on this job is they gave you a dollar value for one, and they gave you a percentage for the other one, and they wanted to test and see. All right, well, you got a percentage. That makes most teams are like, okay, I just slapped 35% on there, right? Across the board, that's easy to do. A lot of teams get mixed up and they don't know how to weight the $380,000, so they might put that in one item or divide it.
We've never weighted it.
Yeah, or they take it and they're like, all right, we have 35 items, so we'll take $400,000 divided by 35, and we're going to put that much in each item. Well, if you do that, then yeah, it's spread throughout items, but it's the way that it's done in here, even though it's convoluted and not necessarily presented in a way, in as clear of a way as it could be, it's done strategically. And if you're able to explain that strategy that you were going to, it shows them that.
Well, this is the year you guys won, right?
Mm-hmm.
The one year.
Oh, this is from the arena competition.
Yeah. So back to the bid closing sheet. We'll go through one more thing on this.
So if they give you this sheet with these columns, or make these
No,
columns?
I made this sheet.
Well, it'll be on video, so.
So this is
So was that.
the next point I want to make in here is we'll look at the orange columns and the two columns to the left. So what those ones are, click on the extended price on that.
I'm just stating one of these.
One of them, yeah. So it takes that number from all the way over on the right side, right? And then it divides it by the units to get our unit price. So that's what all of the numbers that we plugged in are telling us our bid price should be. But in the real world, we don't write $30.91.2 on a bid closing sheet, right? You really don't want to write cents in any items. If generally you pick a dollar or a full dollar amount that one is a lot easier to write.
Oh yeah. Less
And-
numbers.
Yeah. So you round them in there, right? So what I'm doing in here is change one of the numbers in one of the orange columns to something that's close to it. Change that to, or sorry, the unit price number. Change the unit price number for me. No, never mind. I lied. This one's
You don't have a column for rounding.
that's totally fucked up. What's going on?
Yeah, you should have a column next to it for a rounded price,
Yeah.
right? And then your total.
What ended up happening in there? Well,
That's a hard bit.
Because normally we have a rounded price, and then totals at the bottom, and then you just go through and add what you need to like lump sum to make it match.
this must not be my final one. This must be. Okay, so normally this one's not going to show it to you. Normally, what you would do is you have this set up, and you're right on the right spot, and you would make this. So,
Make another column right here.
well, this is the column that I would go with right here.
It's the same one.
Scroll down to the bottom, and this is telling us like if you add all of these up, it's telling you that the extended price should be 1.753, and that's you. So if you tell yourself that's what you want the price to be.
To it on the corner here, double
I'm
click.
gonna double click. Oh, when it's there you go.
Double click.
So if you're saying, all right, this is what we want our price to be, and then over here, it'll be like right on.
Gotta be up higher. Up higher. There you go. Right when you see the arrows.
So right now mine's like underbid from where it's supposed to be at $59,000 in there. That's what that little guy is in there. Because this, I must have fucked with this after whatever. So usually what these ones up here are. So this is our target total, which would be this number 157, and that's our target total based on all the direct costs and the plug numbers that we have in there. So I would have that number. Like this one would equal this right here. And then our bid total would be the extended amount right here, and that would be like this one equals this one right here, and then this is the differential between them. And they would say, all right, you're $59,000 under where it needs to bid. You need to start adjusting some other items to make them work in there. And this is kind of the sheet where you're going to be able to see, all right, yeah, our extended price for this one may have been, scroll up a little bit, see if there's,
So yeah, this should be your rounded column.
right, yeah.
It seems like it's you don't have them rounded yet.
We'll look at the other one in there.
So are these the ones you go through and adjust up or down to try to
No,
get
so
to
this
that
is our
target?
closing column in here. Maybe it'll be better on the biggest one that I have in there. But what it'll be is these numbers don't have to be the same. This right here is where you choose how you want to make them. If you want to make them round number, if you want to bid them up, if you want to bid them down. This is where it would be. So we were saying, hey, fiber rolls, we're always going to overrun in fiber rolls, even though it says that it's costs us $9,000 a piece. I'm going to make those things, $7,000 a piece. And then you go through there and you'll find ones that are going to underrun, and you can write those ones down. And then you're trying to get your bid total down to 0 in here. You'll end up with round numbers, yada yada yada.
When you're talking about overrun or underrun, you're meaning that you're not going to use as many as you think you're going to.
Yeah, or it's a risky item, or they're lump sum items, so you bump the lump sum items up like you bump the
So
top.
basically just trying to balance your extended and unit price, just so your bid total.
Bid total
zero.
is where you want it to be, so that everything's covered in there, but you're spread in a more strategic manner.
Yeah.
On it.
You're trying to get to your target price right here, right? Or
Yeah.
just-
Your target extended target price.
Yeah.
You literally dump $600,000 on some items each time.
So how this is, I know this one's fucked up, and unfortunately that's the way that it is. But this is where you're going to start closing out items earlier on in the day, right? So scroll up so you can see the whole screen a little bit better. So what the orange ones were is locked items. So what I did is we picked a price and we said, hey, it's an hour until bid close. We need to start closing out items and getting them inked into our book, because we're not going to have time to write in this many numbers at the end. We just want to leave a handful of them open to write in at the end in case we get last minute cuts, because they will be calling you all the way up to the last minute, giving you material cuts and stuff that's going to change, giving you sub numbers that's going to totally eliminate a line in here, and they're going to say, hey, I can do this thing for $6,000. You're going to say, well, the total I have in there right now is 10,000. You make sure that they have the whole scope covered on it, and boom, you put in 6,000. That's going to cut your number, and it might be something that you already have closed out and locked in, right? But all that's going to mean is that you need to reduce your numbers somewhere else that are still opened up in there. So that's what this column is. Once you lock it in, you highlight it, you ink those ones in, and you can lock these ones so you can't make changes to them.
How do you know if you can lock them out? Like, what
Where's the
determines
indication?
if you can close them out early? Like, because you were saying that, like, oh, you can close these ones out. What are those typically, and how do you know which ones you can close
You don't
out
want to
early?
close any of the sub items they've given you.
Yeah.
You don't want to close any of your own items.
Okay.
Things once you
Pretty much
are gonna
anything
change.
that they've given you already. That's pretty
Okay.
close.
So it kind of depends on how many bid items they give you and how much time you think you're going to be able to have. At some point, you're going to have to close out more and just keep a handful of them open coming up to the last minute, right? So even, you got to pick what that time's going to be, a half hour before and something like that. But generally the ones that you do are smaller sub items that they didn't give you.
Okay.
Some lump sum items that are that you don't think are going to change or that you're not going to want to change in there. You always want to leave one lump sum item open in case you have one big cut and one big add. You can make a change in that. A lot of the times that's mobilization that you get left open, but there's other high price lump sum ones that you can leave in there. Some items they tell you, they give you a max price here. $5,000 max price, $10,000 max price. Let's make it 10,000. Let's make it 5,000.
Max that out.
Let's close it out. Let's write it in. It is what it is on it.
So they're not going to go through and ask, say why is this item have an additional $10,000 associated with it?
They'll probably definitely ask that question to you, and your answer is either one, we underbid it because we think that it's going to underrun because our takeoff was yada yada, or we weighted it this way because of this, or two, we had that item closed out at the end and we received a cut late in it, and we took that cut in another item. And usually,
Balance out the whole.
usually when you're closing out and you have adds and cuts, you also at the bottom of this sheet, I don't have it on here, but like what we do on bid day is we have a running total of adds and cuts that we're making for closed out items, because you have to, if you win the job, you have to go back and you have to
Be your actual budget.
set up a real budget
You're
on
not
it
gonna give a fuck.
and know where the fuck you came up with that number at the end of the day was, right?
saying we fill in the items that we're bidding.
Yes,
Items that
but
we're
you're
take
the
off.
point is though you have to spread your indirects and your profit over all of the items. So say you're only bidding 13 items, but you have 120. You still gotta spread
Do
your
the
cost.
national. So I think that one of the reasons why that spreadsheet might still be messed up was because I went back to mess with it later on, because that additive alternate totally jacked with my, and I did not have the Excel skills then that I have now to be able to reformat a whole bunch of cells and do more complex formulas and know that how the hell they were. Oh shit. Oh wait, there's another one on there I think.
Oh, on that.
That email.
So should we assign somebody
Project closeout.
for this,
Sure, take
bid
off.
closouts for this particular mock problem?
Yeah, well, I'll keep it.
I think I know
Oh,
one,
did I not send it to you?
one of the guys there. He's wearing like green.
You can do it too.
That's awesome. So we've got an
We got at
alternate
least
for it as
3.
well. That's great news. That is great news. I'm all for learning it. I
We'll be alright.
think as far as
Yeah, like we spent like 4 hours last week on
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
So I think as far as learning from the mock problem goes, probably not crapping, but
Yeah.
totally down to get really into that for the mock problem. Really.
It's good. It's good
Never know.
knowledge. Good knowledge to have. And in all honesty, what ended up happening, like we taught this to the whole team, and I know this is kind of a random one coming in there, but like you need to have a well-rounded team, right? And when you do your Q&A, they're going to ask you a lot of questions on this specific stuff and on the closing sheet. So it's going to be a lot of questions that are directed at who's ever doing that, and they're rolling on, answering all these questions. But that's great that that person knows it, but that's not going to reflect as well as if your whole team knows it. So what happened in ours was I had been asked these questions, I kept shooting them back, and finally they asked a question, and one of the other guys that wasn't what he was working on, but he knew what the answer was. He was like, I got this one. And he gave the answer to it, because you want every person on your team to at least give one answer, if not more. I mean, you're probably only going to get maybe 10 questions. So you need to be able to spread it out and show that you have the most well-rounded team and everyone knows that. So you need to have the ability to jump in and answer a question, because if you guys are well planned out like you are on this right now.
We can mark down that too last year for their scheduler. We answered one question.
Yeah.
They made a point of that afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
You guys go through critique phase.
But
Is there a critique phase?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
So you go through your Q&A, and then at the end they tell you,
right after the Q&A.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
You suck because.
Kind of when then you go through your plus deltas.
At the mock problem, yeah, they give you a critique, but at the competition, you get your critique in your binder after presentation.
Was it in the
When
binder
words
that
are
they told us
finished.
that, or was it?
It was in the binder.
Oh, they hand it back.
Yeah,
So
so there was
notes
no,
in 'em.
after the questions were over, we're like, alright, thanks gentlemen, good luck, and that was it. Shook our hands and it was done.
Hands off to the bar.
I thought we
Most
won.
important part of the day. Drank like a champion.
Oh yeah, we're
Lose-
gonna
lose-
shots of tequila.
Continue drinking like
Dude.
a fucking loser.
The first year that I went,
so far?
like we were so shitty, and the night after, like I finished my presentation stuff and all this, and I was like, fuck it, I'm going to the casino. And I went on a fucking runner down at the casino and came up like $300, like playing blackjack. This was after the day of competition, and like overnight when you're supposed to be crunching and working on all your shit. Our guys were a bunch of jokers. And then after our thing and after we lost, we were there for another night, and dude was up all night, freaking made like $500. It was awesome.
So, did you guys win? Well.
Well, I came up 800 fucking bucks.
They didn't win the competition. I'll
Yeah,
buy
they're
them.
loose over
Okay.
there. The table's loose. I mean,
Well,
it's not like Vegas. I mean, where they got the house advantage so high.
dude, it's all the
Not
same.
that big money
It's all the
floating
same.
around right now.
So the next year we go and we freaking crush it and we win, and I got just raked at the tables. Like they took all my money. I was
You
like,
can't get both.
right? That's what I was like, maybe it was worth losing. Huh?
Yeah, that night I was up $500 on the craps table.
I thought we won, I
It
was,
was that big guy, remember? That guy was hot.
yeah.
Yeah, I left with
Anti-jeans?
I left with
Oh,
$200
no,
on the
no,
table,
just kidding.
and then lost my wallet and TV the next weekend.
That's a gay joke.
You made it killing over there too?
Like, you
Got it all in your wallet.
Junior made me $250.
Yeah.
I just bet whatever Junior bet.
Yeah.
Playing around in Vegas, we dumped, like,
There's
black
like a
and
granite HR chick as well,
my dad.
right next to us too.
Or no, I was on top.
Wow.
Yeah,
She
giving
was
her
just
drinks.
trying to sell us. That was $5.
Careful, you're on video.
Very mad.
Alright, so moving on from that, we beat that dead horse pretty good. But it's 300 points. It's a fair amount of points, and it's something that they're going to be asking you a lot of questions. The other things that are the part of the bid submittal. So that's part of your bid submittal, and then I guess the other 300 points. So proposal worksheet and binder. So that's 600 points right there. That's all the stuff that we went over. So you guys know you got your well-organized binders that are in the right format in there, has all the information in it.
Usually at your
Sub-analysis and list.
Yeah, exactly.
that's we had
So
Yeah.
those two things combined in there, filling out the paperwork, filling out that proposal worksheet, and the other things that are in your binder that aren't part of those. That's 600 points. So that's a pretty fair amount of the stuff right there, right? 25%.
I think the sub-analysis is like 100 points.
Yeah.
Not sure. But that was partially too because it was there and they just, I don't know, they just fucking didn't see it or what. But
Right. So your schedule is well on this one, it changing for your. So your schedule is 200 points on it. There you go.
Oh yeah, years out from last year.
I like Jasper better.
No, I mean this is the
It's basically the
the
same.
exact same thing. It's just
It
not
doesn't have the things in it.
Not details.
not broken out to 4 different ones, which that could, like we said, that could be based on one personal preference. If you wanted to, like I knew that we wanted to spread our stuff differently to labor and equipment and stuff like that. That was one of the things that I was like, alright, we set mine up so we could do that. But we had to do that. We ended up having to do that because that's how they gave us plug numbers on it. Well, I guess we could have just used the total of the indirects and put those
yeah, I
put
don't
those
know.
in there.
How do you apply that to labor and materials if they don't give you the labor and material price for that?
Then you're screwed on it, right?
Yeah, you can't.
There's no
right?
way to do it that way, right?
Yeah, so
That's a good point. Yeah.
so there's no way you